Fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Today I have a guy I really like following on Instagram, and many of you do too. Coach Conor Casey from Canada. He is an ex-pro, but he makes really exciting and fun content now, especially very relatable for you tennis coaches out there. I know many of you are listening, so check him out on Instagram. But we'll get into that, his sense of humor, his career in tennis, and more. But first of all, how are you today, Conor?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Played some tennis, so that's always nice. I have a match tonight. That's not as nice because it's getting colder, but it's not too cold. How's the weather in where you're based in Ontario or no?
Yeah, I'm in Ontario. I'm just outside of Toronto. I love starting the day with tennis as well. I think that's like I go tennis before coffee. I feel like it's before my brain starts going, so that's when I get some of my best hitting. So big believer in morning tennis.
Yeah, it's good. Do you play for yourself, or you're like always stuck coaching? I mean, obviously you've coached like some really good players, like WTA players and stuff before, right?
Yeah, so I try to mix up the week. In the mornings I like to schedule more of like a hitting lesson, perhaps,
Yeah.
and then get into more of like technical lessons as the day goes on. But I don't really do too much hitting for myself anymore.
No, I think that's tough for all coaches. Like you getting into this, like you have to fill your schedule, and maybe when you have time off, it's not like the number one priority to play more tennis. I would assume,
Yeah,
right?
mind you, I do bring my rackets on vacation though. So
Oh yeah, that's good.
first thing I
That's
do is
I like
bring the
that.
racket.
You
Yeah,
should always
yeah,
bring rackets around. That's
yeah.
the way to do it. So your background, like as a tennis player, you were a pro player. We talked about before that you got an ATP point, which I think is bucket list thing for many tennis players. So very good, well done there. But how was your feeling around your career, and did you retire with regrets, or did you feel like, yeah, this was the right decision? I'm happy now.
You know, my tennis career was a lot like my Instagram account over the last year. It started off very serious and very, technical, and then very quickly became comedic. Um, and I think that's literally how my tennis career went. I started off, I was that kid with a racket in his hand from age 3. Went to did a couple weeks at Bollettieri's, did a couple months at Chris Everett's Tennis Academy, ended up getting a scholarship to Ohio State. And actually, I played a year at Ole Miss, transferred to Ohio State. And from there, I started to just realize that, I like to have a lot of fun and goof around, and became the comedic relief for the team, which is a valuable person on the team, right? You got to keep things,
Light.
light. Yeah. Are you,
Cool.
are, are you Swedish?
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
guess.
so when I was at Ole Miss, my team was Swedish,
All right.
and yeah, it
They
was
did
me and
levity.
oh, it was great. Like, I mean, the Stoics. Uh,
Yeah, they were
but
actually.
like, I remember like sitting on an airplane. So there I am. This, as you can probably tell by my videos, I'm pretty high anxiety, or at least I'm very attuned to every little detail that's happening around me, whether I like it or not. And I was on an airplane with 4 Swedes, all ranked in the top 50 in college tennis, and we're going through a thunderstorm, and the airplane is shaking, and literally I thought I was going to die. And I look over, and all 4 of them are sound asleep,
Oh
and
no.
I'm like, if Bjorn Borg's resting heart rate was 25, like these guys were cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, it's sometimes tough to get life out of a Swede, and I'm not, I'm more like you, more like hyper aware and alert, right? So for me, it's tricky sometimes to be like, hey guys, wake up. That's probably why I'm not living in Sweden anymore, because it's tricky to get with the energy sometimes. Like it's also calming, like a cat, almost like you're watching a cat sleep, but it
Yeah.
can also be frustrating at the same time, right?
Oh, they were totally like, they were the calming energy on the team. I actually say that quite often, that it was like soothing to be around them.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like if you're a pro on today's tour, or whenever, really, like to have like your coach being maybe a soothing guy, because your life is stressful enough trying to win matches and get points, right? No matter what
Oh,
like pro level you're in. So I think that maybe that's a good thing, right? As a coach.
well, totally. Like you talk about the WTA. So I went on the tour a little bit with Lucy Safarova and
Good
with
player. Yeah.
And Nastia Pavlyuchenkova. I was sort of part of the coaching staff. This guy, Rob Steckley, who's one of my best friends, was the actual full coach. And I would say that Rob who's an incredibly successful WTA coach. He's coached players. He coached Lucy to the finals of the French. He's what I would call like a balancing pit bull. Like he's the alpha dog that comes into the dog pen, and all the other dogs just relax, because they know like his energy is just soothing. And I think as a coach on the tour, especially, you're not out there fixing forehands. And I mean, maybe sometimes, but in the middle of the season, you just need to keep your player calm. And a lot of those touring coaches do a great job of that.
Yeah, I think that's a superpower in a way because you're living with the player's results, and the player might have like a lot of energy being negative or positive depending on the results, and even like positive energy can be too much, like it can take out too much energy before a match, etc. So I think it's good to have that kind of neutral vibe to it. That's just a
Yeah.
guess, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, positivity, sometimes people see it as insincere if it's not really well earned. So yeah, sometimes just that like stoic, straight-faced coach who just steady march really works.
You said you had a comedic skill also on the tennis court. Dive into that a bit more. Like, when you played, like, did you struggle with the mental? Like, I mean, I can do that on a lower level as well. Like, that you see life as kind of, a fun journey in a way, but it's sometimes tough to take a tennis match serious enough
Yeah.
for me. That's generally what I struggle with.
Yeah.
And did you ever do that? Like, was that the one thing that you had issues with?
You know, yes, definitely. Like I struggled immediately with trying to be serious. You know, our sport is it's such a meritocracy. We're so invested in ranking each other and trying to see who's better. And you know, quite often we don't even play each other. We just ask each other questions to figure out who's better. Did you beat? You know, oh, you beat him. Oh, okay, what was the score? Well, I beat him 5-3. So you beat him 5-2. I guess I'm better than you, right? Like we're invest. And right away, I just saw that in the world. And by the way, I completely play these games as well. So yeah, I found it just a comedic minefield of stuff to point out. And I also think that as tennis players, it's helpful to be a mimic. Like you see Djokovic, he came out when he first came out on tour, he was a little prickly because he was doing these spot on imitations of everyone. And I feel like a lot of us tennis players, we learn through imitation with our technique. So that's where I get a lot of my, my ability to imitate people is, I think that's related to tennis.
Yeah, I think as learning anything, right? Whatever you're trying to improve, I also play guitar and sing and stuff like this. So if you can imitate to some degree, I think you're quicker pick up stuff, right? Like that's what kids do,
Yeah.
right? When they learn stuff, they imitate adults doing the same thing, and that's how you learn. So I think that skill is important because it means you can visualize the elements of a swing or what a player does well, and then ingrain it into your system, kind of.
Like I remember as a junior, I'd be watching, like I can remember very clearly Yevgeny Kafelnikov. He had this continental forehand where he raised the elbow, and I remember seeing it on TV, and I just couldn't wait to get on the court and give that high elbow a try. And you know, sometimes I work with juniors now, and the first thing I'll ask them is, "Who are you liking on television? Who do you want to be like?" And if a player says, you know, I don't really watch, or I don't know, I make them discover a player they want to imitate. And some days I'll just be like, okay, today you're Nick Kyrgios. I want you to do his mannerisms. I want you to, you know, maybe don't behave quite so much like him, but show me what it looks like.
Yeah, do the serve, especially.
Yeah.
So yeah, one thing you raised that was interesting that I've talked to other coaches and other tennis people on the podcast about is that you see the younger generation, maybe you get juniors that you're playing, like they're training that are very good players, but they're not watching tennis. Is that something you've noticed regularly? I've heard it from other people as well.
Oh, a ton. You know, at the risk of sounding like an old curmudgeon, like I'm shocked at how little tennis people watch. Ironically, at a time when there's never been so much tennis to watch, right? Like every week now, there's a massive tournament. So yeah, I wish people would watch more. I think they would benefit from that.
Were you ever a big like tennis watcher? Did you watch a lot of tennis growing up, and how is it now with all the work you're doing in tennis?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I'd watch every tournament, every match. You know, I knew all the players. I could probably recite the top 50. The first thing I would do is when I got that new tennis magazine in the mail, I'd go back to the back page and see how the rankings had switched. So I was obsessed, and still have my ear to it. You know, I haven't been watching as much this year, but I can still talk. You know, I still know exactly what's going on.
And also, tennis in Canada is like in a good spot now, like compared to maybe when we were growing up. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
you have so many strong players like Oger Aliasim, and you have Chapo and Raonic is still around, and did well during his career. So it's Canada is doing really well as a tennis nation, and also on the WTA side, So
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
definitely. I think, looking back at it, because I actually retired, I was the generation before this generation that got good, right? And I like to joke that I'm part of the generation that created the path for them to walk on. And I do think that actually there's some truth to that, not necessarily specifically just me, but my generation. Sort of, we gave our country some humility and ability to build. And one of the big things that our generation did was sort of give them we went and played college tennis, and we went and tried on the tour, and we said, hey guys, like, this is a lot tougher than you think. You got to really whittle down. Around the same time in the early 2000s, the progressive tennis balls were being introduced into Canada. And the Canadian Federation really, really invested in that, and then you could see the results pretty quickly with Chapo, Felix, and stuff like that. America were slow to invest in that, but now you're starting to see they've got this massive wave coming, and I think a lot of it does have to do with sort of the progressive tennis.
Yeah, and with all this success, like, I mean, you have now many countries that weren't doing well before, like, tennis in China is growing. You mentioned we talked about Canada already. Italy is doing amazing. Like, they have so many players in the top 20. It's insane, right?
Right.
But then with the general feeling that people are not watching, why do you think that is? Do you think tennis has, like, there's too much distraction in general? Tennis has a tough time competing because it's a slower sport. Do you have any, like, gut feelings around this, or?
Yeah, I think that people are just not watching tennis as much as they used to. I don't know. I think probably the distractions, right? Sitting down to watch a tennis match, there's lots of dead air in between points. Uh, yeah, so that stuff. I mean, the 3 out of 5 model at the Grand Slams, you always feel like you can leave the room and come back. Yeah, so I don't know though. It's a good question.
It's a tough
What do you
question,
think?
and also it might not be true, right? Like, you get some data from some,
Yeah,
statistics bureau, and you're not sure, like, is this a reflection of reality, or is it just like numbers are a bit skewed due to, like, the watching groups or whatever. It's sometimes difficult because it seems like tennis is doing well, and the players, we have exciting guys like Alcaraz, we have Sinner,
yeah,
lots of young stars coming up, and the tennis is overall, like, in a good spot. That's my feeling about it. Even if we don't have the goats, like now Rafa
yeah,
retires, Novak is probably close, Roger is not in here anymore, right? So
yeah. And I don't know if it's the theory of relativity that the observer affects what's happening, but as I become more of a country club coach who plays with beginners and maybe the players that aren't as serious about the sport, I'm starting to notice that they're not watching as much tennis. Maybe that's the correlation, is that the players that I'm working with are more junior, because I'm not working with very many elite level athletes that don't watch tennis. So
no, that's probably true. Yeah, it could be a sample, like a sample
yeah,
you're used to and talking to. When coaching, like, I mean, you coach, I guess, amateurs also of all levels, right? So
yeah.
what do you think is, like, the biggest struggle to coach amateurs, like, today? Is I mean, today you've always been probably the same thing, but is that something you enjoy, or do you prefer, like, I would like to travel with a WTA player again on the tour? What would
Yeah.
be your, like, sweet spot there?
Definitely my sweet spots become the beginner, working with the beginner, working with the C team, the women's teams. I do think that I enjoy that. I think the hurdle there becomes, you're dealing with adults who are past that part of their life, the adolescence into their 20s, where they woke up in the morning and they went and learned a new skill. Like, these are people that have, decided that they're an accountant, and they're sort of the concept of learning something new is maybe tricky for them. So a lot of the time is like getting people to believe that they're actually doing a pretty good job, and that they're not going to pick up tennis right away. Like, tennis does have that learning curve, um, and just kind of keeping them engaged, getting them to not get down on themselves too quickly, realize that they're doing a pretty good job. I think that's pretty tricky. People are big perfectionists that want immediate results, right?
Yeah, a lot of people who are, like, ambitious go to tennis. Like, the tennis is one of the most difficult sports you can play.
Yeah,
So and they know that instinctively, maybe, or intuitively, and then they want to become a tennis player. But then obviously the road to becoming a decent player
Mhm.
requires so much work, and you need to be a bit of like a stoic or like a masochist to enjoy this
Yeah.
whole program, like this whole journey. So your job, partly as a coach, besides giving like the best advice you possibly can, is probably the encouragement part, because it's so easy to
Yeah.
want to give up and play pickleball instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like the thing that it's the thing that I think is addictive too to the masochistic tennis mind, right? Is that constant feedback that we get. So let's say, for example, I use this analogy sometimes with people, right? You send out an email and you might not know for 2, 3 days whether it was a good email or not. And you're going to spend all this time stewing over it. Why did I use those verbs? I can't believe I said sincerely. Like, what is this? Like a send out? And you can stew over it. With tennis, you hit a forehand. Oh, that wasn't very good. You're instantly getting to hit another one. Okay, that one was nice. Maybe it could have been a bit further in front. So we get to sort of satisfy the constant micro feedbacks, right? We're constantly getting to adjust. And I think there's something really addictive to that. And, like in an hour as a masochist, how many clean forehands are you hitting?
Yeah,
8?
it's a good, it's actually a very
I
good
don't
point.
know. Yeah. So it's like you're constantly chasing that dragon.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, maybe that's a good. I haven't really thought about like tennis as the. It's an interesting point of view, right? Like it's the immediate feedback sport. Like you. I mean, golf definitely is the same in that sense. I think they're very
Yeah.
similar. They share the same kind of demographic. A lot of tennis players also play golf, because you hit a stroke, that was $1 million. You're like, wow, on the green, I'm the best. Then the next shot, straight out into the bunker, whatever,
Yeah.
on the next hole. So you get that instant feedback, and it's up to you to adjust all the time. Like tennis is
Yeah.
a sport of adjusting. The same with golf. Like, okay, I have to fix my swing. It's not working. My putting is all over the place. All this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got pickleball now, which is doing popular. And I think it's instant feedback, but you're getting good feedback all the time, maybe, or more good feedback.
Yeah.
People want that.
Yeah, I think so. Is it popular also where you are, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I know it's a US thing. In Europe, you don't not seeing it as much, of course.
Yeah.
Paddle is pretty big here
Yeah. Well,
instead.
pickleball's big. And then padel is sort of pickleball for good tennis players, is how I would say. Like it's like I've got people that played college or have full understanding of how to use the continental grip, and they're going, you should, padel's more of a serious conversation. It's like, you should try padel. Oh yeah, I'm going to try it. But pickleball is, it's a bit more of the masses. I don't like to shit on pickleball all day long, but it's taking over for sure. I think pickleball is making us as tennis people reflect on our sport a bit. um, it's making us, and that's where I feel like, me is with my content right now. I think tennis has taken more of an underdog stance, or not necessarily an underdog, but we're now being open to ridicule a little bit more, because pickleball just came out and, frankly, just kicking our butt. If you want to talk about like just, cocktail party conversation, right? It's like pickleball's happening, where tennis is like, what do you think of that, tennis? So I think this is helping us actually look at our sport, investigate some of our idiosyncrasies. Could be the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yeah, I like this point of view. I've been thinking about this a lot, because it's like you always hear from, across the pond or whatever, like, oh, this is just a wars, like the
Right.
noise level of pickleball. They're taking courts, they're painting ugly lines on the courts, which I personally don't really find that
Yeah.
nice to look at. But
No.
people exercise, or they try to exercise while holding a beer or something, depending on what
Yeah.
I've watched them. And even played pickleball myself quite a few times. So, but it's like, it's better to look at things the glass half full and saying, okay, why is this happening? Is there something we can learn to become a more engaging, beginner friendly sport? Because I think tennis always had this elitist, thing about it, that like it's country club. But it's not only country club. You pointed that out in one of your skits, and you said it already today. Like this like you always measuring your penis size with the other
Yeah.
players, right? With like, so you beat this guy, okay, that's interesting, and then now you lost to this one, and it's always like this measurement all the time.
Oh,
Now you have
our
UTR,
sport,
so that's gonna also add extra to it.
totally. Like I was thinking about that, how we're so obsessed with measurement that we as tennis players need to go, okay, singles is better than doubles. Like it's more prestigious. Like we need to have that in our head as tennis players in order to sleep at night. But then we also, like, how often do I need to answer the question, can the top men beat the top women? Like are football players having to answer this question? You know, like, is this we're constantly trying to meritocratize and figure out who's the best. Like, so yeah, I think that's a problem that we have that we need to sort of like handle. We need to get a grip on that.
Yeah, tennis needs therapy, right? Like but it's also the thing with the GOAT, right? So
Yeah.
people get obsessed with this question, which if you look at it from a little bit of a zoom out point of view, you're an alien in a spaceship, hovering over Earth. You would be like, why are they doing? Like they're bashing each other on Twitter. Who's the best of Fed, Rafa, or Novak? All amazing athletes. Who cares who's the GOAT if it's Novak now with all the slams, of course. But why should we care so much? It's like we're happy to have these players being great ambassadors for the sport and bringing more players to it. That should be it, really.
Yeah. It's an interesting question that we need to look inwards, figure out. I think ultimately, like, well, tennis is a sport, right, where you lose more than you win, and 51% is a winning percentage in tennis. And some of the kids I coach that are getting straight A's, if I told them, guess what, 51%, they can't grasp that, right? They need 80%, 90%. And I think, maybe there's some correlation there with our school system and the fact that, in a 51, when you're losing all the time, you need to justify, okay, yeah, maybe I'd be winning more if X, Y, or Z.
It's an interesting game of life in that sense, but because you can partly learn from your tennis matches, but also that point of, you're gonna make errors, right? It's like life. Like you're gonna make loads of unforced errors, and you just have to learn from them quickly and try to make fewer ones, right? That's generally how you have to adjust. Like also in life, if you're gonna make mistakes, and then you suck it up and you move on, right? But in tennis, it's so frustrating to make an error that you get stuck, with this, like, and also how we count the stats on watching tennis matches. Like, oh, he had 17 unforced errors, 4 aces, and 11 winners. So this is tennis, right?
Yeah, totally. I think that the silence adds to that as well. I mean, not only are you making errors, but you're doing it in front of a silent audience, and you can project your thoughts onto them. Like I remember as a kid looking to the audience and looking at my dad, who didn't really know anything about tennis and still doesn't, and just projecting the thoughts onto him that I was having, right? Like, he's thinking that he's spending too much money on my lessons, and he's thinking I'm an idiot. And after the match, my dad's like, "You played great."
That's a good dad, man. Tennis parents is one thing, right?
I get so many people in my inbox saying you got to make fun of tennis parents, and I haven't. And I'm not saying I wouldn't, but they're the hand that feed, and I don't like to bite the hand that feeds. And as a parent, I feel like you have this crippling love for your child that is just so makes you delirious. So it's a tricky one to make fun of, because I do also think that bad tennis parenting can lead to serious issues. So I don't want to start making fun of something that could be very serious, right? I mean, not to get too serious here, but the Menendez brothers were tennis players, right? And
yeah, I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah, and you know what? They actually played at the tennis club that I used to coach at in LA. Yeah. Wow. So
where do you used to coach?
So I coached at a place called Mountain Gate Country Club in Brentwood. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to LA next week. That's why I was curious. I'm visiting some clubs and some companies and stuff like that. So it's going to be a tennis working trip. But I might not get over to Brentwood, but it's an interesting that they were there.
Where are you going?
I'm going to meet like Wilson at Beverly Hills Club. That seems cool. Maybe I'll go to Malibu. That seems like a nice venue as well. The whole point of the trip is actually to meet Tennis Warehouse in San Luis Obispo. So I'm going up the coast. I just start here a few days, get the jet lag over and done with, because I might suffer from that. But it will be nice. I meet some tennis people, some other content people as well in tennis, which is, it's like a growing thing now. Like there are many content. Probably something you've noticed as well. Like I think I see new content accounts all the time, like growing in tennis.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of good ones.
But when you moved over to making like content, like you were like a journalist before as well, or no?
So I was a little bit of I was a journalist, and then I got into television writing. So I was a sitcom writer, mostly in Canada, a little bit in LA as well, writing sitcoms, acting in films as well, and got into directing and producing television. And then I decided to get into the content. So it kind of like, yeah, it's a natural progression. It felt like it was time to sort of take that writing platform that I've been working with and my tennis world and just merge them together and create a hyper niche, you know?
Yeah, that's the issue with tennis. Sometimes it becomes hyper niche, right? But it's probably hyper niche is good because there's so much content anyway, right? So having a micro niche or whatever is not a bad thing necessarily.
Yeah, like I was hesitant to get into content because I was like, oh, who cares about tennis content? And then now I'm going like, the more niche, the better. And I'm telling my brother, who's an editor, I'm going, make editing content. Like people want to see this. There are people that want these little snippets of life. They make them feel relatable. They make them feel like they're not crazy. It's like it's doing a good service.
Yeah, the relatability is everything, and that's what I really feel with your content as well as a tennis micro niche myself, right? And I think it's the writing is great, and
Thank
the
you.
acting also because you can have a great idea for a skit, and then you are all the characters, right? And if you're not a good actor of any kind, then it's gonna fail, sadly. But you do that well, so I'm not surprised that you have a background in this. Was this something you wanted to pursue instead of tennis, or you feel like happy, like tennis coach is kind of, or this kind of way of combining it is like the perfect little thing for me to do?
Yeah, it was like the creative side was almost a weakness in tennis. I was sort of one of those guys that would, like we said, I was, going for the silly shots, maybe low percentage, obsessing over my outfit, had to have the pants tucked into the socks, still do. Uh, I think what got me into tennis more so than anything was the fashion. Um, so, what brought me to the sport and then what became sort of my weakness was a bit more of like a, being a flowery creative type. And then that just segued nicely into the creative writing. I didn't even know I didn't know there was a difference between a creative person and a business person until fifth year university when my pop culture teacher told me you're creative. And I was like, oh, that's what's wrong with my game. That makes sense. So then, yeah, it just was it was like the only things I can do, play tennis and like make jokes. So it
Two
works.
good skills though, but it's good that you
Yeah.
can combine them. Like if you can make fun of stuff, like you said about editing, right? Like even if it sounds super niche, but imagine how many editors there are. Or I don't know if you edit your own content, but like I edit my
I
own
do.
content most of the time, and that will then be relatable to me as well if someone finds something annoying and then pokes fun at it, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I do all my editing, all that stuff, and I think learning how to edit, which you can do very quickly nowadays with stuff like CapCut and all these things, they really help open up your mind to like to writing, right? If you're writing and editing together, it really helps you narrow things down. So that was a huge find. Like I didn't know how to edit a year ago, and now I've edited every video you've seen on my page. I edited, so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think one of the skills, like now everything is so intuitive in terms of software, right? So it's not that hard to get into. You understand the timeline. It's like time itself, and then you just cut that and splice it up. But it's also understanding, and what I like with your skits is that there's not one like needless word. I mean, I think they're pretty slim, like, and I like that stuff. That's how I mean. I went to journalist school in
Right.
Shenandoah, right, in close to DC, and one of the things we had to read was this guide by Strunk and White, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah.
It's like this
The
80
elements.
page.
I
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah,
that.
exactly.
I always have that on my desk.
It's a good one. It's
Oh,
still a good one. I enjoyed it in uni, and I do really think back to it, right? Like omit needless words, It's
the
that key
element
thing.
of style. Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
elements of style. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Oh no, that's the Bible. Hmm. When I
It is
was
good.
working in yeah, when I was working in writing rooms, I would always walk because I became like one of the senior writers, so I would be training other comedy writers, and I would throw that on the table and be like, "Get to know this, guys."
No, but it's such a brilliant thing because I think we're in also like the internet is seemingly endless, right? So you can upload gigabytes of content how often you want, right? And
Hmm.
the problem with is, I mean, there's no talk really about like byte pollution or other like digital pollution, but it feels like
Right.
it's you should try to upload stuff of quality that would be better if you can, and fine-tuning the content. I'm not great at doing this, but that's why I see when other people do it well. It's like being able to trim the fat a bit and make
Yeah.
it, especially with like comedy. I think it makes much more sense, you know.
So I had an acting coach in LA say one time that comedy is just drama faster.
Ah,
And
okay.
if you look at a lot of my videos, like even the one I put out today, I'm making fun of people that play in a tennis bubble. The first cut of that, I leave the when I watched it myself, I didn't distribute it, was not funny because everything's slow and I don't have those fast cuts. If you get those fast cuts in, all of a sudden it becomes a bit more spastic and it becomes a bit faster. Yeah, so yeah, that I definitely agree. Like faster is funnier. Like I'm always trying to lose a couple seconds here and there, tighten things.
Yeah, it also kind of ties into the generation we're in today, or the time we're in, where like you have to be concise. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, look, you look at the podcasts there, like where people talk for 3 hours, and you can listen to it while doing other stuff. But if you want to grab eyeball attention, which is much
Hmm.
tougher when you actually have to watch something, I think then you really need to make sure that it's some grabbing content. Otherwise, the eyes will move on somewhere else. The thumb will start scrolling, and then you've lost the attention, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How bad are you with Instagram addiction? Do you have any, or are you like you're stuck in it, like scrolling around?
Yeah, I'm pretty bad. My wife would say I'm horrible. Um, you got so much stuff you're doing on your phone. I try to justify it, but no, I'm a phone addict for sure. There's no denying it. I'm always looking for other inspirations, and my algorithm knows exactly what I want.
They're pretty good,
So
the algorithms. You have to give them
yeah,
that, right? They were pretty good. I mean, I like I never used to watch a lot of YouTube like until a few years back now, but then it's like that's really what I enjoy watching because you find your niches, and then um there's endless content, and you find your favorite creators, and it's so useful. Like you can have fitness videos, you can have whatever like history thing you're
yeah,
into, or music stuff. Like everything is there, right?
yeah, absolutely. Like if I'm literally, I'll be walking around feeling, maybe if I'm feeling a little discouraged, I pick up my phone. All of a sudden, I got some entrepreneur telling me, the secret to getting ahead in life, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel so bad anymore. Put my phone back in my pocket. It's
Yeah.
crazy how it can be beneficial too. Like it
Yeah,
gets a
yeah, it's
bad
it's
rap, but
we talk about dopamine addiction, but there's obviously good things coming out of it. Like, I mean, I grew up like you, most likely in the, where computers were new and the internet was like, wow, like you were dialing up on a modem and it sounded
mhm,
very interesting when you had to call up a line, right? And you didn't have these, I would say, shortcuts to learning things. Now you can have like Duolingo to learn an app
yeah,
to learn languages quicker. You get like if you trying to learn piano, you're getting like the piano visualized so you can see the
right.
notes you're supposed to hit. You can do it slow tempo. So there's so many cheat codes to it. Tennis is obviously a very manual sport. Like, is there any way you can learn tennis in your head like faster using like video or using any tools outside actually hitting balls with a coach?
Yeah, it's funny because right now there's these simulators, right, that are sort of I first saw out of Japan, like watching some of these tennis content creators out of Japan that were hitting on simulators, which then learned were like miniature tennis courts with a virtual reality wall, like on the third floor of an apartment, like of a building, right? So that I found pretty cool because I thought it looked pretty neat, and I was like, would this be possible where I live? And now I see a couple like in Houston. I see this thing called the tennis wall. I'd be very interested to give it a try. Having said that, when I was at the peak of my tennis, I found visualizing and just sort of like closing your eyes and imagining a match and winning that match. Like if you could imagine yourself winning it, that was very, very beneficial. So I don't know if you always have to be hitting balls in order to improve your tennis.
I can see that because yeah, visualization and also like playing tennis matches is very different from training tennis. I think that's you see a lot of people like, oh, I love playing tennis, and
Yeah,
they practice, or they maybe have a hit with friends, maybe the same
yeah,
guy for twice a week, every year, and then when they go into competition tournament play, even on the lowest level possible, like nerves set in and frustration sets in, and it's like very mentally draining for
yeah.
them to play.
No, I think that in a way, our sport, we don't we don't market, or maybe market's not the right word. We don't push the idea that people can just get a great workout rallying. And there's a huge demographic of people that probably play tennis every single day and don't even engage in point play, right? But when people look at the sport, they go, "Oh yeah, 15 love, 30 love." I know people that have been playing for 30 years that they just hit cross courts, a couple volleys, just until the shirt's soaked in sweat, and then they move on, right? Don't hit like I even say that serving is a completely different sport than playing than rallying, right? So yeah, definitely a lot of pieces to our sport that I think people can engage in that aren't necessarily just playing points.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at the fitness scene in general, right? There's so many different small niches in fitness. Like, oh, we do this dancing, we do this thing with the music, and like nothing seems weird enough, really, where you're like, oh, no, this cannot be done or seen.
Yeah,
So if you had like cardio tennis, like just
right.
hitting for maximum cardio, getting a nice workout, a sweat, then you don't have the things that can be negative with tennis. It's like the scoring makes people frustrated. You have
Yeah,
someone cheating, happens quite frequently,
yeah,
especially in college tennis, and
yeah,
like that frustration of losing. So you don't need to lose. Like then people can feel their ego is somewhat protected. So
yeah.
I agree with you. Maybe that's something that can be pushed more.
Oh, I heard that they're going to start playing competitive dingles. Are you familiar with dingles?
I am a bit. I was actually invited to play Dingles in LA now, but please, for the audience as well, explain what
Yeah.
Dingles is because I know it's pretty popular.
So dingles, like, I'll try to just explain this. As a tennis coach, it's always difficult to explain drills. Dingles is essentially four people on one court, and you're playing doubles, or you're playing 2 points simultaneously cross court. So the people on the deuce side are playing a point cross court, and the people on the ad side are playing a point cross court. When one of those points ends, somebody hits out or in the net on the cross court, that ball that's still live is now open to all four. So it's dingles, doubles, and singles. It's dingles. Definitely can find it on YouTube if my explanation didn't help you there. But what I heard is they're going to start playing some like actual tournaments or where people are dingles teams and they play other dingles teams. I was excited
That
about that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I've tried it once only, but and I know that it's getting popular. Like even like quite serious tennis players are like, yeah, I'm doing this Dingles thing on this day,
Right.
and I'm like, okay, this is that popular?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it sounds silly, right?
I think that all tennis leads doubles words in the sense that we're eventually all becoming doubles players. You know, nobody sets out to be like you never hear a 6 year old say, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doubles player, right? And now I'll just preface by saying I'm a doubles specialist. I didn't want to become one, but I love doubles, and I think that ultimately, I think the life force of tennis, ironically, is doubles. Um, if you looked at it on a global scale, it's being played at most clubs. When you get into an older age, it's being played, and I think it's almost this sort of like this port in the storm. We start out as singles players. Our minds get messed up with all the cheating, with all the losing, and then eventually it's like, you know what? I surrender. Okay, doubles. Now I got a friend I can kind of kvetch with beside me on the court. I'm on a team. So yeah, I think doubles is like a healing almost.
Yeah, you have a good point. I think I thought about this a lot, like because the doubles gets some crap from like established singles players, like
Yeah,
on podcasts and whatnot. Like, oh, it's not who cares about double specialists and stuff like that. But there's if you like exactly like you say, if you look at I have my father, for example, living here in Spain as well, and he plays doubles all the time. He
yeah,
loves hitting. We played singles today, like we're just hitting. I mean, he cannot really keep up, but at least we can hit some balls. But when he was like super pessimist about doubles, like, oh, this is silly. Who plays doubles? And now he's like, he loves it. He plays
yeah,
doubles all the time, 4 or 5 times a week. So I think it's a sport where most people play. You can play up to 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever,
yeah,
as long as you're alive. You don't need that maximum movement that you need as a singles tennis player if you want to play on any level. And it's social. So you have the team. You have a guy you can talk to or girl, and it becomes a little bit less harsh on your ego, I think, generally. So I think for many people, it's worth a shot, but maybe it's the kind of elitist approach again in tennis, like, well,
yeah,
real men play singles, like this kind of.
yeah. Right away, we come into tennis being like, okay, singles is the best. I'm a singles guy. and then you get sort of pulled into doubles. Yeah, I think there's a yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's something, but it's something I think they've tried, but maybe it's a lukewarm attempt, like from the tours, professional tours, to let's make doubles more exciting. But I feel like they've
Yeah,
really not been successful. I think they could have done a better job, right? Because
yeah,
you can make doubles can be quite fun to watch in the right circumstance. Some might argue that okay, professional doubles today, or men's level especially, it's so power based, right? Like it's
yeah,
like big serve, volley, get the ball out. Go back maybe 15 years, it wasn't as like that. It was a bit more finessing.
yeah,
I can buy that argument, but still, like you can do a better job with marketing there.
yeah. You know what? I think I was watching Tsitsipas and Badosa, so Dosa versus Coco Gauff and Ben Shelton at the U.S. Open. It was this mixed doubles kind of. I think it was an exhibition.
Yeah,
Unbelievably
exhibition.
entertaining. Yeah, unbelievably entertaining. I'm going, why? This is actually more entertaining than watching some of the high level guys and girls play. Like, why isn't this every week? And I was romanticized by it, and then it dawned on me. It's like these guys are singles players on a doubles court, quite literally, and they would lose to mixed doubles specialists because that's what happened right away in the main draw. Dosa got their asses handed to them by two people I hadn't heard of that were clearly double specialists. So I think there's an unfortunate disconnect, right? Like these double specialists, they're blue collar workers, they're money ball players. They deserve a ton of respect. I have an utmost respect for them, but they're all wise. They're all economical in their movement, and they don't have
Yeah.
that star power. So I don't know. Is there a way that we like if you? I guess what I'm getting at, a big point is if we forced our singles players to play doubles, like let's say we go, okay, Sinner, Alcaraz, you guys have to play doubles. Um, are we then taking away spots of guys that actually deserve those spots?
Yeah, this is an issue, and this is the eternal issue, I feel like. But I think you need to get the top guys to play doubles to get the interest into doubles again, right?
Yeah,
Like I think that's generally it. So I mean I really believe you should be able to be a doubles specialist, but doubles will never get the respect it deserves unless you get the top single guys to also play. Because if you look at like Grand Slams, for example, like you had Kyrgios with the Kokonakis, they
yeah,
won the Grand Slam, stadium packed, like of course home crowd, but huge rioting kind of atmosphere, really like a good selling point for tennis. Like, wow,
yeah,
look at this, like it's football atmosphere on a tennis court. These two guys are quite charismatic, a little bit crazy, and they won the title. Like, so you can definitely take it, but you need the names, because I think it's going to be tough to invent like, oh, look at these guys, they are
yeah, yeah,
two guys who played for 2 weeks, and then next week they will play with another guy. So that's a bit
yeah,
trickier, I think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you had the Jensen brothers who were specifically doubles back in the '90s. I'm dating myself there, but they were like the party dude doubles team. And
I
yeah, we
mean,
don't have
Brian Brothers was. I mean, I
Brian
liked
brothers.
that sense because like then you have two. I mean, brothers that are top of the game, and they managed to create like an identity of themselves and something, because they always play together as well. I think when you start switching the teams, and then it's like, oh, it's
Yeah,
Pavic Mektic, but now
right,
he's with the other guy. And then like the rankings get in your head. You can't keep up like who's number one now because he's switched teams.
right.
So then I think it gets trickier. Like
Yeah,
if you can't switch teams so much, I think it's a bit better. But then you
yeah,
lose maybe out on flexibility as well. So it's a tricky one.
yeah, yeah,
But it would be good. Like Alcaraz and Sinner and these guys playing, I think it's good for tennis and for doubles. And I think also like then you would get maybe more people watching, and slowly then you have more people playing. So it's something that has to be done at some point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
So when you play yourself, like do you still play any
Mhm.
tournaments, or it's just coaching?
You know, I played doubles up until about 5 years ago, and I was playing in the doubles league. So deep into my 30s, up into my late 30s, playing in the doubles leagues, and recently have kind of stopped on that. I remember standing at the net, and some guy who was playing college tennis against, and he had the Solinko strings in the racket, and I was just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to react fast enough to this return. And since then, I've just sort of like taken a back seat to playing. So I if I do hit, it'll just usually be with one of my stronger lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, when you get
Yeah,
enough, like probably if you have stronger players.
yeah,
We do a lot of gear stuff. Like Tennis Nerd is,
yeah,
is a lot of gear, not always, but a lot of gear. Like what rackets did you use when you were playing pro, and what do you use today? You're a head guy, as if I understand
I'm a head
correctly.
guy and I'm a prestige guy. I like the fine paintbrush, micro, tinkering. I like the prestige. When I touched the prestige in college, I think my coach Ty Tucker was like, "Here, you're a prestige guy," and it was the first time I'd used it, and it was like the racket that I stuck with. As a junior, I jumped from every racket. I was using the Hypercarbon, I was using the Prince Mid Plus, anything. Yeah. So prestige is my racket. I like a really loose poly. I'll go like 44 pounds. Um, and yeah, got to have that fresh white grip on there.
Yeah, it's obvious. But the prestige, which prestige are you using if you look at the current batch?
Well, actually, you know what? I should say I'm a prestige guy, but I've retired from that because I can't handle it anymore. So I went over to the head boom, which I think you were talking about that on your functional tennis podcast a little bit. How the head boom is more of a half and half, like power and feel. Lacks a bit of feel, but has enough power. Like it almost feels like a feel racket, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
And then I most recently have the Gravity Tour 98, the Head Gravity Tour 98, which is coming out in 2025. And it's the best racket I've tried in 10 years. It's just,
Cool.
yeah, it's got a nice feel to it. I didn't like the other Gravities. I felt that those were kind of like a plank. Um, but this one's got a nice feel to it. If you like prestiges, if I think again, kind of listening to your functional podcast, you were talking about how we're kind of ending the era of the feel racket. This almost feels like a feel racket for power players.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of describing. I just reviewed that. I struggle a little bit with the launch angle. I even told Head that, but that's my game, right? Like it was quite open pattern. But
Right.
the feeling and the pop you got out of that racket was very surprising. Like I thought also that it would be more like board like with
Yeah.
feel like the other gravities, more control. But this one feels like it bridges a gap a little bit, like going towards more like powerful rackets like extreme booms, but still staying within that kind of more controlled feel. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting to see what people think. Yeah, it depends a lot on the string. Like, so what are
Mm-hmm.
you using? You're like a Hawk Touch guy in that, or are you using
I,
something else?
I have a Hawk Power in the Gravity right now, but I do like the Hawk Touch. Yeah.
Yeah, Sinner style. It's a good string.
Yeah.
It's a good string.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Hawk Power is pretty good in that one. I try different setups, but string is important. And that's something like as a coach, I guess you see that all the time. People come in with, it's not so important the racket for most people. They just have a fresh grip,
Yeah.
string it relatively often, compared to what
Yeah.
people do. But then you see these high tensions, like with players coming in with like 57 pounds on a pure drive or something ultra stiff,
Yeah.
and they have the elbow brace and something. You're like, oh no, don't do that to yourself. It's gonna be
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah.
You
There's
see that
certain
a lot as well, or?
I do. I see that. I think I see the higher tensions with the pure drive. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I've known guys that have the pure drive and they're stringing it at like 64 or something insane. Yeah. You can't really do that with a prestige in today's game.
No, you get nothing as well. So I mean, like it's better for your arm to string low, less
Yeah.
vibrations, less board feel. But if you have a racket that is so powerful that you have to string high to control it, with for many players who hit maybe a little bit flatter or don't generate that trajectory, I think it's gonna be an issue, to string lower, and then you end up like close to 60s or over 60s, and you're asking for issues. I mean, some
Yeah.
people they're immune, but a lot of players get issues, right?
And like, this is a question I'd like to ask you is so with tennis rackets, right? I remember 90s, early 2000s, there would sort of be beginner rackets, which, you could buy at the Walmart. Decide if you like the sport before you invest in something bigger. And then they would have almost club level rackets, like rackets that club people use, maybe a bigger head. And then they would have pro rackets. It felt like there was 3 tiers. Right now, I feel like it's almost like a 2-tier system. Like you've either got junk or you've got like, you'll see a club player who's just started with the Alcaraz racket. And like, do you think, is there a middle ground with rackets anymore? Like, or is that going away?
There is a middle ground, but it's completely unadvertised. I think like the money is in the high level models, right? So you have models like you start complete trash aluminium racket you buy at the gas
Right.
station that
Yeah.
nobody should buy in my opinion because it's gonna like warp in 5 seconds. But you have like models called like Boost for Babolat, I think it's called Boost, and like T models and stuff like they have these names that are kind of lower tier priced models.
Yeah.
That's where you find like I think the beginner should start, and then you can get like a more slightly more expensive beginner's racket, which are like in head lingo is like MP Light, for
Right.
example, or Head Team. You know, these are excellent rackets, great feel, good quality build, but just like 105 square inches, quite easy power, ball jumps from the racket and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just that we're seeing the pros endorse rackets, and then that's what people want to buy,
Yeah.
even if it's not for them, you know. So that's the issue in tennis. You're seeing like, oh, Nadal plays an Aero Rafa Origin, which is like 370 swing weight. This should be my racket. Or
Yeah.
Novak, he plays a Speed Pro. Then I should play with that because that is the best racket. But rackets are not like iPhones, you know. It's like, oh, I want the 16 Pro Max. No,
Right.
this is a tough one for you to use. It's going to be
Yeah.
worse for you than an easier one, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, do I have, yeah. So this racket with, so this thing, it's right. Like you would never
That's
see
a
a,
cool one.
yeah, it's the Head Instinct Power 115, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a typical like not quite. It's not something you find in the gas station, but it's a good racket for a beginner or like a veteran who hits really short swing, right? A really short.
100%. And I think that the short swing, like this concept of keeping the compact stroke, and that art needs to be resurrected a little bit at times because I feel like we get so invested in people are showing up with the Nadal racket, wanting to learn the buggy whip forehand. And I got no problem with that. But maybe if you're Rosemary playing on, into your of a certain age, like I think that we have a bit of stigma on using those more powerful rackets and bunting. I think we need to soften that stigma a little bit and get people to do that at times.
I think it's all about sustaining rallies. So I completely agree. It's something I thought about a lot because I watch my, when I go to the club, I usually play here. There's a lot of like mixing. So you get there. It's a group of all kinds of levels. Like, okay, not super high level, but elderly people generally, but not always.
Yeah.
Like, could be a 16-year-old in there, from beginners to beginner intermediate to intermediate, whatever. And you play doubles and you mix it. Like, so you try to mix, okay, there's two strong guys here. Let's put in two weaker players, try to mix it up. So there's one guy trying to make sure that the mix is fair
Right.
in general. And you play one set and you rotate like teams all the time, which I think is a great system. And their technique is completely unimportant. Having long Alcaraz style take backs with two arms and high elbow, who cares, right? This
Right.
is about getting the ball back. Even if you hit like the shortest swing and you have guts and 25 kilo tension or 25 pounds tension, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's about getting the ball into a place where the opponent can get it, and how you do it doesn't matter, because then the tennis elitist approach dissipates a bit. Like, we're not
Right.
like, oh, you don't have to hit the ball like Alcaraz, it's not technically perfect, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
like,
No, you just made me think of a video idea. It's like when your coach wants you to switch to one of these and you're like, I'm not ready to retire. No,
it's a good video.
I still got some fight in me. Just
You should do that. That's a good one. Like, that's like when you're like, oh, this is for you. Yeah. You play, you do 20 minutes. You're like with a new client, like, okay, this is for you, and they're holding like the latest Alcaraz racket or whatever. It's like where you have to, like, that racket is great, but you have to really get on the ball and like under the ball. Like, even if you're a good player, like, otherwise the ball's gonna sail on you.
Polyester plus these pro rackets all in all these amateurs' arms. Like, I'm thinking there's a pandemic of wrist and elbow pain in the tennis world. I don't know if it's always been there, but it certainly is currently. And I think a little bit has to do with like club players advancing to these polys and these rackets too quickly. Maybe.
Yeah, I know it's 100% the case. Now, there's endless amount of polys, and when you try a polyester string, it's a bit addictive because the ball keeps dipping in, even on like pretty so shots, right? Like, it can still dip in, and then like, oh, but this is like cheating, like Agassi famously said once, and then people don't want to go back. Although, like, if they have a quality multifilament in the right racket, it's gonna help them get the ball back without arm pain. I mean, I played strong players in the club league I play, and that play a multi-filament. You know, they
Mhm.
like they were good players. They play like futures. You know, but they're like, okay, my arm is a bit, so they can play super good tennis with like a prestige and a multi. You know, so it's just
Yeah,
that it's not seen on the tour as much, and that's why people like, oh, I want to play like the guys on tour. You know, that
yeah,
they're like 62, and you're like, maybe not. Maybe it's better to not play like the guys on tour.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I
More,
think we advocate for doubles and for players to not be so macho and find equipment that actually gets the ball over with no pain. You know, that would generally be better for everything and
I
for
agree with
tennis as a
that.
sport.
Yeah, definitely.
Do people around the club you're at, like, do they know now that this guy, he's doing killer content? Like, that's, we don't disturb. Like, he has on court one doing, doing recording.
Yeah, and they know that they're inspiring videos, so they're on their best behavior when they're around me.
Ah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
very good. Yeah, because otherwise you're going to get roasted. You know, it's like tennis comedy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They know it. They see sometimes
Yeah.
they go, "Oh, that was me last week." I said, "Yeah, I told you I was going to make that into a video."
That's good actually. It keeps people on, like, it's a curb your enthusiasm for tennis. You know? It's like you
I
keep
mean,
the show their real world.
honestly, that's my mission is to just keep exposing all of our stuff. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to show everybody what we're like, and then we can have those conversations, and then we can beat pickleball.
Yeah. No,
Right?
and also I think like making tennis. I've seen like the ATP tour try it better now. I would say, like, having also worked in content and media for a long time. Like, it's like they're trying to make a bit more light-hearted stuff. You know, like
Right.
use the pros, like be more funny. It's not so serious, and I think that you're growing the audience. People feel like, oh, maybe tennis is not for like the super uptight country club folks, right? It's actually something that I can get into. It can be a bit
Yeah.
cool, a bit funny. You know, I think that's important.
You know, honestly, the two best messages I got this year were one person wrote me and said, "I don't even like tennis, but now that I'm watching your videos, I started playing." And
Wow,
yeah, so that to me
that's
was
awesome.
my favorite.
I also really respect, like, I used to be a bit more elitist as well, in a way, like how I thought about tennis. But the more you work in tennis and you're around tennis players of all levels, the more you want just to see people enjoy it from all levels, even if they just started. And
Yeah,
you want to see that kind of the first smile when you're really starting to love tennis. Like, we all know that feeling, like how we
totally.
fell in love with tennis, what happened, how did it feel. But when you're seeing that with new players or players that coming back after a long time off, that's also a very rewarding feeling. Like, if you inspired someone to actually get back into it.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's those pinnacle moments in the development. The first clean ball you hit, the first time the continental grip fit works, right? These are magical moments that you remember. So it's good to be. I like being on the court when they happen.
Will you do more content around technique as well, or will you try to stay within your kind of more like comedic style and niche?
You know, I have people ask me, "Are you even a coach?" It's
That's great.
like when did having a sense of humor and being a coach become exclusive?
Are you even
So
a coach?
they
How
go,
would you be able
no,
to talk about this without being a coach? That would be
yeah, no, I'm
super
just a
fun.
hired actor who just is like reading lines. No, like I'm a coach. So I'm definitely going to continue with the coaching stuff. I think that, you know, I want to have that value. I still like inspiring players, and I like to use the humor to sort of go like, hey guys, like, you know, this other stuff that I'm making fun of, this is stuff that we can work on as well. But yeah, I'm definitely just as excited about the instructional stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And combining them, I think, is the best way, because then I think you memorize stuff better if it was funny as well. Like, we all relate to humor in some way, you know.
Yeah, yeah, like, you know, I think a lot of the stuff. Okay, so the stuff that I'm dealing with is, I feel like tennis and mental health they have a correlation there that we haven't really scratched the surface on. We're still the sport that suffers in silence. We're still the sport that rewards being quiet, and you know, sucking it up. And I think whenever anyone tries to have a conversation about mental health, they just kind of go glossy eyed. It's a heavy topic, and I'm just like that. You know, my wife and I, we want to talk about something serious. It's like, but if you can do it with a sense of humor, you can catch people's attention. And if, like, so for example, I made a video about tennis is therapy, which was, you know, tennis is therapy, and then it's 15 seconds of me losing my mind. And I think people watch that and they go, oh, that's relatable. And then the conversation eventually becomes, you know, why is it therapeutic? Like, why is losing my mind therapy? And I think that maybe it even helps the sport. Maybe it helps people acknowledge that they have some issues that they need to handle.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I noticed that as well. Like I on my Patreon, I had or for the YouTube members, I put a video where I break a racket once every 10 years, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
I haven't broken that many, but I was playing some matches, and now I've been playing a lot of like events, like some UTR stuff and stuff. But and I test rackets all the time, so I play with a racket, like 5 rackets in a match, trying to get just testing to see how it works in when I'm tight, whatever. And it's
Right.
usually very not good for me.
Yeah.
And then in the end, I just broke a racket, like, and
Right.
the guy just like, oh, how are you doing, kind of.
Yeah.
But then I posted that because I feel like it's good to not hide this shit, that like this is not this is happening on all levels, and the response was very good, and people really relate
Yeah.
to that frustration, and I think to talk about that is important, like for everyone. Like you can see Rublev, he's going bananas, like when he's missing the fifth forehand unforced, and this stuff is in all of us, dealing with our life on the side of tennis and maybe letting it out on the tennis court, or just being frustrated with how the tennis is not progressing the way we thought it should, right?
Yeah. No, I have a book that I actually wrote I'm in the process of trying to get published. College Tennis Confessions is what it's called, and it's about my time on scholarship and the process of trying to get a scholarship and the recruiting process and how much I struggled with mental health at school. And it was cathartic for me, but I feel like the intention of writing it was to not only give people like a guide on how to handle college tennis, but to really like be like, hey, everybody else who's dealing with these mental issues, and like, you're not alone. Like, look at this, look at how crazy I went in college. And I think as writing it, I heard a good quote that said, be the person that you needed when you were at your lowest. And as a coach, that's what I try to do. And with this book, that's what I did. I'm like, I'm writing this book for me sitting at college, struggling with my tennis, going, I'm not going to be a pro. What's going to happen? And this is the book that if I had read at that time, I might have gone like, okay, it's going to be okay. Just like, keep working on your game. You got time. Yeah. So I feel like through my content as well, I'm trying to make content for those people that are struggling. And I'm going, guys, it's okay. Like, we're crazy. I'm crazy. For lack of a better word, I shouldn't be using the word crazy, but we're all struggling. Let's figure this out together.
That's great. I would love to read that book. Like, and it's also like writing about something that is close to your heart, and it's kind of like a letter to yourself in a way, but obviously for other people to read. I think it's very cathartic and like very healthy to do. And what, like, everybody talks about journaling, but I think that's like having a match journal, having some kind of journal. Like I use like even my Patreon to get shit out, like to be like really transparent of like how if you're frustrated with something or related to tennis, then of course. But I think that's great. So so you have to keep us posted when that book hits the shelves of some kind.
Definitely. I'll come back on and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always welcome. I really enjoyed our conversation. Super fun. I love your content. People check out Coach Conor Casey on Instagram. Great tennis content. Also instructional, but for sure funny. So this is important. You have a nice day, man, and enjoy your tennis and everything else.
All right, my man. See you later.